Is this the end of foreign brands in China? Can Starbucks and KFC fight their way back into dominance in the Chinese market? We got to talk about it, so please hit that like button. Check out other episodes of the Hot Pot Boys. Essentially, I feel like I'm doing like a business school case assignment right here. So anyways, guys, let's roll the clip.
First quarter revenue reached 6.28 billion yuan. Meanwhile, Starbucks has been struggling in China. The Seattle-based giant has more than 7,000 stores on the mainland and opened more than 800 outlets in the first quarter of 2024. Their China revenue was $735 million over that same quarter, $135 million less than Luckin. If you think price is the only advantage Luckin has, think Chinese entrepreneurs are also creating their own fast food chains, like this one.
This isn't simply a knockoff of KFC and McDonald's. It's centered around Chinese elements. But as with other domestic brands in China these days, price is certainly a feature.
So, I mean, that's basically it, guys. Particularly Starbucks, and we're going to be focusing on Starbucks because that's what the video is mostly about, you know, which is globally the biggest coffee brand, but not doing so well in China anymore because of China's domestic brands. And also, I'm going to, you know, give my own reasons why I think this is happening because, you know, maybe there's a lot going on in the Chinese psyche and whatever. But anyways, guys, please hit that like button. Check out other episodes of the Hot Pot Boys because I like talking about this because, like, you know, I'm always curious about these Chinese brands. Now, you know, we're going to get into the fact on whether you think like, oh, the Chinese brands copied the American brands or took after, or they're remakes or heavy inspiration. I mean, listen, there's definitely some of that going on, but it's not like the West hasn't been inspired by the East either. But anyways, I want to talk about these 7 reasons why chains like Starbucks, but maybe particularly Starbucks, is struggling in China. You know, and this is, I did a lot of research and, you know, I put my little MBA hat on. I'm not an MBA student, but I went to business school. Anyways, let's get into it. Point number 1, increased competition from domestic brands. Guys, the name Luckin Coffee, I just saw they're opening up now in Malaysia. Okay, so they're expanding across Asia, but they have over 20,000 stores across China. This is a cheaper, more efficient, and newer and domestically owned native Chinese brand of coffee that is eating up a lot of Starbucks share. Also, another one is Cotti Coffee, which I actually had. There's actually a Cotti Coffee in San Gabriel, California. So in the Chinese zone, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, the Chinese zone is going to have some of these Chinese brands opening up because people are familiar with it. And a lot of people from the 626 may be familiar with it or more open to it because they go back and forth or whatever. Also, not to say this, but it's not just those 2 brands. McCafe, which is McDonald's cafe section, which is actually a lot bigger in Asia than it is in America. And also K-Cafe, which is essentially KFC's McCafe side. And you're going to notice, and it's no surprise, but KFC is huge in China. They love fried chicken, and so is Popeyes. Anyways, point number 2, other brands like Luckin Coffee and Cotti Coffee can offer lower prices. So Starbucks being this American-owned and operated American brand, it's not even cheap in America. It's not the cheapest coffee in America. It goes to China, and of course, it's considered a premium product. You know, the build-outs are more expensive. They have a Starbucks Reserve in Shanghai. I've been there. I've actually visited it. And basically, you know, their cost is just a lot higher, and so therefore their prices are higher. And a lot of people are like, hey, you know, in China, they're like, yeah, well, you know, I just want a coffee. So, you know, Luckin Coffee, make a good coffee. It's pretty cheap. Like, I don't have to go to Starbucks and pay this premium international, multinational price, you know? And I think that I'm going to get more into it, but I think Starbucks, you know, they focus on maybe a more artisanal type of coffee, but I don't think Chinese people really care about it. You know, coffee is now becoming a more regular drink in the cities of China to the point where like people are just like, yo, I'll kind of go for the Dunkin' Donuts of coffee. Like people still buy a bunch of Dunkin' Donuts, you know, in America. So also I think a lot of people are not valuing Starbucks' 3rd place, meaning it's like a place to chill and meet. In America, I'm not going to lie. When I see Starbucks at the airport, I get a free water there, or I grab one of those cool, like, you know, pink drinks and whatever. But if I want to save the calories, I just get water. And it's a very nice chain. I appreciate Starbucks in America, but I'm saying in China, I just think they got other options. Point number 3, they are able to tap into the latest trends and localize the product even better than Starbucks is, because some of these other brands are actually ran and operated by Chinese subsidiaries or international subsidiaries and not actually the American company. So Starbucks in China is owned by itself. And at this point, it's proving to be a disadvantage because Yum China operates KFC, CITIC and the Carlyle Group, which is an international group, so it's probably a lot of Chinese people working there. They run McDonald's in China. RBA, Restaurants Brands Asia, runs Popeyes and Burger King in China. So these are like groups that are designed to run international businesses and run businesses in China. So they're able to tap in and kind of get a feel for what the domestic market wants, where Starbucks is more or less trying to pull you to like the Starbucks stuff versus go to you as a consumer. You know what I mean? That's like a different way of doing things. Point number 4, I think the foreign kind of cachet and the foreign spirit is wearing off in China, where they don't consider it as much of a badge of honor anymore to buy Starbucks or buy these American brands as they once used to. Now, I'm going to talk about it like, 6-7 years ago, I went to Shanghai. I went to the Starbucks Reserve, and it was kind of packed. It was all the rage. There was a line to get in. But at some point, it kind of wears off because you realize, like, it wasn't really made for Chinese people. Like, Starbucks, again, was like, hey, we're the brand. We're going to bring people to our taste, and we're going to make you like these croissants, and we're going to make you like this type of coffee. Versus Luckin Coffee, Kati Coffee, they're just like, yeah, like, I'm a Chinese person, so I know what the Chinese like, so I'll give them like the sweet, milky drinks, that's what they like. And, we give them a bright aesthetic, and we'll just make people feel comfortable. We're not trying to force people to consume a different culture here. And you can just tell by these pictures, like if you just look aesthetically at Luckin Coffee, it's you could say it's maybe not the most unique looking, but it's just very like feel good. It's bright colored. There's blue aesthetic. You look at Kati Coffee, it's very bright, clean, bright sand wood, like the colors are orange, glowing, to contrast with Luckin Coffee. And then you look at Starbucks in China, and it does look like a cool Starbucks, but it's kind of got this like rustic, industrial vibe with like the bags of coffee beans, and Chinese people just don't care to see the bags of coffee beans. Like, I know that there's this kind of a hipster or artisanal vibe to it, but ultimately I think when it comes to coffee, Chinese people want sweet, milky coffee in a bright environment, similar to boba shops. Yes, I said it. I think these Chinese people, if you can look at these drinks, sometimes at Luckin Coffee, in the picture, it looks to be more than like 60% milk. And what is boba? Boba is probably at least 60% milk. So all this like Starbucks Reserve, like look at this top ceiling with like this glowing like lava top with the rocks, and it's like industrialized, and it's very like orange and tin vibes, like very like rusty. It's just not fitting the Chinese people. Now, I get it. Chinese people do love a lot of luxury foreign brands. Of course, they still love BMW. There's nothing in China that compares to LV, Gucci, Dior, Chanel, Hermes, blah, 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 Rolex. It's true, there's not. But on the more middle class level of brands, you got Li Ning, Anta competing with Nike, okay? Like these brands can actually, Li Ning and Anta on certain levels can actually compete with Nike, versus maybe there is not a LV or Gucci or Dior coming out of China anytime soon, right? But we're talking about on the middle class level. This is coffee here. So of course, Luckin can compete with Starbucks. It's not crazy to think. Play the clip.
There is definitely a rise in nationalism or patriotism. People are showing a more obvious preference for domestic brands. I think patriotism definitely plays a crucial role in this consumer behavior change.
Point number 5, Starbucks focused a lot on the big cities instead of all cities. And that's why like Starbucks, it didn't get its brand out. It was really trying to be in like the tourist zones in the big cities. I remember like going to maybe like the famous tourist streets. Like I think I was in Chengdu, and it's like the famous, you know, kind of touristy old street that they have there. And like there was a Starbucks there, but Starbucks is not going to be in like the super out of nowhere, like middle class neighborhoods of like second tier cities. You know, they focused on the big tier cities, meaning they were kind of seen as this hyper premium product. And I think they always assumed that there were always going to be like this experience that Chinese people would look to, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go to Xintiandi so I can go try the Starbucks. I just think it lost its air because at the end of the day, people were there just going to buy coffee. And coffee, if it's a staple, you can drink a mid-level coffee. Like, I don't even drink the best coffee every day. I like coffee. I drink coffee almost every day, but I don't need the best coffee. Yeah, I mean, listen, Chinese people, point number 6, don't really care about the true coffee culture. And when I mean true coffee culture, I mean like the traditional, like espresso coffee culture that I saw in like Italy and France, like where people want the small little espresso cup and then they want to sit there for like half an hour. And Illy is like the brand and all that. Like, Chinese people don't really care about that. I don't even know if they drink black coffee, like, to be honest. Well, that's not advertised. I'm sure they have cold brew and stuff like that. So I would say even Starbucks arguably doesn't really embody that Italian kind of espresso culture, right? And then so it's like, if you're not even offering that, then Chinese people just want their comfort zone, you know? And yeah, number 7, the Chinese economy slowed down, making people a little bit more price sensitive. And yeah, obviously, like that person said earlier, there is some patriotism that comes along with consuming, you know, domestic brands now that the domestic brands are at the level. There was a time, I'm gonna be honest, there was a time, maybe even 10 years ago, that there was not a lot of domestic Chinese brands that could compete with these foreign brands. That's why they made such crazy impacts. But now, at least as far as coffee and drinks, which is a highly competitive field, they're competing. Anyways, guys, what are some Asian brands that you'd like to see in the USA? Like I said, they have a Cotti Coffee in San Gabriel, California. We just went there in the 626. I wouldn't even be surprised if somebody brought a Luckin coffee to America. Luckin is now making its way throughout Asia. It's probably going to go into Malaysia, Indonesia. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes into Singapore and then eventually comes to America. But let's get into the comments section. Somebody said, yeah, BYD, which is a Chinese car brand, is already dominating the EV market, and there's nothing else that Tesla can really do about it. The world will be a multipolar economy-wise, and as for more and more Asia brands are getting to high quality, especially Korean and Japanese, and they're going to be cheaper. So basically, BYD is a Chinese EV brand, which is dominating all markets, like except the Western markets. But like in India, Africa, these cars are being bought like crazy. So BYD, as far as electric vehicles sold, is way outpacing all the American brands put together. It's not necessarily the most valued in America. We've talked about it on this channel. Someone said, I think it's only big corporation Western brands and it's universal. I mean, in California, we don't go to McDonald's as much. We go to In-N-Out. We don't go to KFC as much. We'll go to Jollibee's or try Korean fried chicken. And we only go to Starbucks out of convenience. Other than that, people are going to boba or making coffee at home. Yeah, I mean, even in America, Starbucks is losing a little bit of its air. But I will say this, guys. McDonald's, KFC, and Popeyes in China, they're actually still doing pretty well. There is a Chinese brand called Tianxin. I forgot the name. I gotta look it up. But there's this Chinese brand that advertises how the burgers are made in China. And it is kind of playing off some national pride. But I'm sure that the chicken sandwiches are on par. Now, are the burgers on par? I don't know. But I'll tell you this, Asia does great chicken sandwiches. I think the chicken sandwich game in Asia, even just speaking on China, might be better than America, but not the burger game. But yeah, and then someone said, nah, rich Chinese folks still like Western luxury brands. Yes, luxury brands. But for the middle class brands, like I said, especially beverages, everyday beverages, I think it's getting very, very competitive. So overall, in conclusion, are there any geopolitical implications? And the reason why I pose this in the beginning is because I feel like some people, they look at it like, hey, oh my gosh, like these American brands are not killing it in China anymore. They're not dominant anymore. That must mean American companies are not dominant anymore. That must mean the rest of the world is catching up. That must mean America is not going to be dominant anymore. And there is some truth to it, as the world is a multipolar economy, meaning that it's not just America that runs it. Even power-wise, it's going to be multipolar too. You know, like America is just not in the captain's seat of the world anymore. It still is, I think, but just not as unanimously as much as it used to be. And I think that when it comes to Chinese brands copying the West, obviously, yeah, Chinese have learned a lot from those brands. I mean, of course, there's always the accusations of IP stealing, which definitely happened. But like, I think that ultimately, you know, it's not that different than when like Scorsese made The Departed. That was based off of Infernal Affairs, and they won a bunch of Oscars for that. Literally. He barely shouted him out, barely shouted out the Hong Kong movie industry too. Or like when America remade The Office, and The Office from Britain, right? Just because it originally started in Britain, and The Office became like one of the most iconic American TV shows of all time, like that and Friends. You know what I mean? So it's like people are remaking each other's stuff, and no doubt China has taken the last 10 years to, Chinese entrepreneurs have learned over the past 10 years of, you know, taking after America. I mean, even like Alibaba taking after Google or whatever, you know what I mean? That's just the way it is. And it wasn't wrong. It's just globalization. Ideas get spread. It's not that hard to copy things. Like at the end of the day, it's hard to make them successful brands, and it's hard for them to be extremely profitable, but it's not hard to copy things. Anybody can copy anything, essentially. So anyways, guys, let me know in the comments down below, are there any other brands from China or Asia that you guys want to try or have heard of? And what do you think about the dominance of American brands like Starbucks moving forward? What do they got to do to change? Maybe they got to listen to the locals more. I don't know, lower prices, or maybe just downsize. I don't know what they're going to do. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, we out. Peace.